Chapter 2. The crown of trees had golden green leaves, which glistened and gleamed in the light. There was a magical glow, a bright halo, which bloomed from the hill at night. Scruff's wood had been named by the Scruffs, who claimed it as their own. The real name was whispered among the trees, as sways and swishes upon the breeze, as creaks and croaks through the roots and shoots, an ancient language which only they knew. The Scruffs felt no love for the flowers or trees, but desired the wood to burn, build, and hoard. Luckily for the creatures that dwelt in the woods, the town's expansion had come to a halt, for halfway up the steep incline rose a tall rock wall, which separated the woods from the town. Piles of trash crept up the cliff's curving face, but crashed back down in tumbling cascades of garbage waves, burying the huts and alleys below. The plateau was covered with a flowering meadow of daisies, buttercups, and shrubs, across which the path wound up to a gap in the trees, their branches entwined into an arch. The trees grew close, tangled and towering. Their branches formed a straggly wall, weaved tightly and fawned. Beyond lay the dark, cold shadows of the forest, its floor covered in leaves, logs, moss, and rocks, with toadstool and horseshoe mushrooms growing from the dank, rotting wood. High up on the crest of the hill, above the leaf canopy, stretched a vast and ancient ash tree. It was the Great Grandrasil, the living spirit of the forest. Its colossal trunk sprouted powerful, reaching limbs, which coiled and sprawled into a great canopy, overshadowing the woods below. Connected by its roots and leaves to the vibrations and breeze, it felt the presence of all living things, and brought harmony to all that dwelt within the Scruffs wood. Under the old, wise tree sat a small, round, and bushy ball, which, in fact, was no bush at all. The shrub was a Spriggan, known as the sprig. It was a magical creature, a spirit of nature. Its bushy body was a tangled ball of roots, shoots, sproutings, and twigs, covered in vines and moss. Its head was a scrunched up bunch of pointed leaves, sat upon a spiralled coil of stems. In the middle of its face was a solitary, flowering eye, surrounded by petals, tendrils, and berries beneath, which curled towards its jagged, leafy mouth. From the sides of its head grew two large fungal ears, and from the top sprouted a sapling. The sprig whistled with the birds, a soothing song which spoke upon the breeze of the Great Grandrasil Tree. Its branches swayed and leaves did dance as they rippled along to the tune. They spoke of their friends, the wood and its trees, of the plants and the creatures which dwelt within. They sang of the sun, the sky, and the clouds, and their joy that they felt in its warm, vibrant glow. After a while they sang their goodbyes, and the sprig skipped away down the hill. The sprig hopped and leapt with springing steps over logs and rocks and roots. It danced and pranced between the trees towards the cliffs and the town below. All of a sudden, from the sky fell a bottle, which dropped onto the sprig's bushy head. Half inside, the sprig span and stumbled, tumbling over and rolled around on the ground. With a wriggling struggle, the sprig shook itself free, toppling over backwards into a sodden, muddy puddle. A rain of garbage fell from the sky and pounded into the ground. Erupting clumps of assorted trash smeared and splattered across the forest floor. The sprig picked itself up and shook the mud off its mossy behind. It began to examine the bottle with its one flowering eye. It was knobbled and crooked, badly made from brown, brittle glass. There was part of a label stuck to the side, soggy and peeling, but all of the words remained. It read, Scragg's Bin Juice Tonic, Bogwater Brewery, Bog Lane. The sprig frowned as it studied the strange bottle it held in its branches. Flipping it over, it peered into the hole at the top. Through the curved glass base of the bottle an image of the town came into focus. The outline of Scruffyness glowed in the sunlit haze of the rising smog below. Suddenly, blots of shadow broke the rays of light, and into the woods fell small bundles of trash. It had been flung from catapults, high into the air, by the careless Scruffs below. A blanket of garbage settled over the ground, making tinkling and rattling sounds, which echoed among the trees. The sprig looked around at all the stuff that had fallen from above. After a moment of careful consideration, it decided to collect the trash up into a neat pile, cleaning the mess from the forest floor. The pile grew large and tall, teetering unsteadily over the steep cliff wall. Swaying gently in the breeze, it rose up high above the treetops, snaking through a sea of sun-kissed green and golden leaves. The sprig clambered up the pile, holding the glass bottle in its twig hands. Climbing to the pinnacle, it held on with a shaky grasp. Standing atop the huge garbage mound, the sprig gazed out over the Grubber Valley. It beheld a most saddening sight. There were no plants, nor trees, or anything green, just mud and muck and thick black smoke, which billowed up from the town's many chimneys, filling the air with smog. The pile began to sway to and fro as the wind grew stronger and pushed at the winding column of waste. The sprig slipped, then slid on its back, surfing down the unsteady, swaying stack. The huge tower collapsed, cascading and tumbling as it fell away towards the town. The falling heap cast a huge, cold shadow over Scruffyness and the ignorant Scruffs below. Unaware of the rolling trash slide, they went about their daily routines of lazing around and slacking off. The churning mass of trash hurtled down the steep, sloping cliffs, towards the highest huts on the hill. Scrag, owner of the Bogwater Brewery and an uncommonly enterprising Scruff, was stirring the contents of large wooden barrels. Each contained a steaming mix of stinking liquids, the secret recipe for his bin juice tonic. It was loved by many Scruffs, who would trade it for their precious stuff. Selling bin juice had made Scrag the richest Scruff in all of Scruffyness, with much more stuff than any other Scruff. He was presently very busy, carrying out his regular routine, slowly dragging an old, beat-up and dented bathtub towards a large pile of garbage, which was heaped in the corner of his yard. He raised a piece of pipe, which had a tap attached to the end, above his head. It gleamed in the sunlight, before being drilled deep into the stinking stack of trash. Whilst moving it around inside, he held his ear up to the mound, and listened for a telltale squelching sound. A clear sign he had hit a pocket of juice deep within the heap. He slowly turned the tap, and out flowed a thick, brown and smelly sludge, which filled the bath up to the brim. Scrag then lit a small fire beneath the full tub. The hot juice boiled and bubbled, billowing steam with a great stench of rot and grot and grime. This irresistible smell attracted many daring thieves, who would hide in his yard, spoons in hand, and try to steal a taste of the prized liquid. Scrag knew they were hiding there, ready to pounce when his back was turned, so he kept a bottle of clean water collected from the rain, which he would spray them with. All Scruffs hated clean water, as it tended to wash away the rotten smells and muck which covered their fur and which they adored. As Scrag turned to scare the sneaking Scruffs, he realized they had already ran away, as fast as their pink, clawed little paws would carry them, down the hill towards the river. Scrag smirked, and stood upon his toes, puffed out his chest, and flared his nostrils. "And don't come back," he huffed, as he menacingly waved a large ladle in the air above his head. It was then he felt a cold, creeping shadow crawl up his back. The chill rose over his head, and made him shiver. His ears pricked up to hear a low, rumbling sound, which quickly grew louder. As Scrag turned towards the sound, he glimpsed the large shape of the trash slide falling towards him like a cresting wave crashing upon the shore. Trying to run, his legs skidded and slid across the slimy yard, failing to grip on the slippery, dew-soaked mud. Finally, in a panicked frenzy, he scrambled his way out into Bog Lane. The large alleyway and open sewer snaked down the hill towards the River Skug. The trash splashed down into the yard, cascading over the walls and carrying the barrels of bin juice away. The great spill poured out through the gate and into Bog Lane, curling around the bend, tumbling through the mud and down the hill. Scrag ran from the flowing garbage as fast as his stumpy paws could manage, but he was not quick enough. The trash slide washed over him, picking him up and swirling him around. He struggled for his freedom, waving his arms frantically in the air, before sinking into the garbage gloop. The avalanche rolled onwards, tumbling over huts and holes, diving down burrows and tunnels, carrying away slow and sleeping Scruffs. It covered all in the slimy, sodden and rotten waste, as it rolled down the hill towards the river.